Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Cioffi. It's almost Thursday, just a half hour short. Thanks for being here, doing this late live stream after doing one early this morning on what's going on across the pond over in the British Isles and in parts of Europe. And actually, I'm going to start there before we go to our own weather because it's very interesting what's happening there with their storm, and we have Storm Caroline. This is the UK Met Office names these storms, and this is the new GFS that is sitting with this low very deep, 966 millibars. I put the map up with the surface and the 10-meter wind because the wind field with this is very impressive. Here's Scotland. And Scotland, on the northern part there of Britain, and the purplish area you see here. If you look at the corresponding scale, those winds are all in excess of sustained winds in excess of 50 knots, and you've got whole gales extending down the west coast, from the north coast of Scotland down the west coast of Scotland and on the north coast of Ireland, and these are strong northwest winds here that are being indicated, and I'm going to move this forward. This storm is going to bring some blizzard conditions to parts of England and Scotland, and that wind field then shifts eastward. Let me just back up a couple of frames here, and through the overnight into tomorrow morning, those sustained 50-knot plus winds touching the north and northeast coasts of Scotland as the low continues to move to the east and moves its way up as a really wrapped up cyclone there just off of Norway and Sweden. And the strong winds, there are gales that go all the way down through southern England into the English Channel and through much of the southern areas of the North Sea. And then, of course, you see the winds increase as you go to the north. The precipitation with this, and we'll put that on the map for you, and you can see throughout much of western England, northern Scotland, northern Ireland, snow for Thursday night into Friday. I'll go back a couple of frames. This is a pretty solid area of snow. You're getting strong winds coming in off the relatively warm water of the North Sea and the North Atlantic. And you, of course, have cold air being drawn down here from eastern Greenland and on up from the southern areas of the Arctic. So this cold air and this moisture, and you've got snow. It's hard to figure out how much snow they're going to get out of this. But even going through Friday, you can see some of those streamers there in western England. And then there's just a bit of a break. I'll put the snow map up, and you can see the pockets of 12 to 20 centimeters that show up in parts of western and southwestern England and Wales, over northern parts of Ireland. But there's a larger area that winds up getting, at least several centimeters or higher, extending into southern England, of course, northern Scotland, and even into southern parts of Ireland. And of course, there's quite a bit of snow being indicated across Western Europe, and they do quite well with the snowfall over the next 10 days. And I take it out to 7 days. And all of Germany getting some sizable amounts, and as well as you go south into Western France, northern Italy, and in the Swiss Alps getting clobbered with snow, and down on the northern shores of the Adriatic. So again, very, very impressive here in terms of what they're going to be dealing with. And they have another storm. I'll back up again. There's another system that's going to follow right after Caroline is done, and we'll move it along here as we there we go. So now we're into Saturday, and you can start to see some moisture coming in from the west. There's another low that drops southeastward into Ireland and England, although the air might be a bit warmer, but it still produces a significant area of snow here for northern England and southern parts of Scotland. That low translates itself toward across the North Sea and over toward Germany. And then you have another deep low that forms down on the coast of France here that winds up bringing some big snows. Look at all this snow that in the darker blues as you go into the eastern half of France on up into the Alps. And that storm translates over across Italy right there on the southern the coastline there. You can see there's a lot of tight wrapped little isobars. There's a fairly well developed little low there. So busy times with this winter weather that's happening across England and in Europe. And it looks like there might even be another storm later next week, and more northerlies begin to set up over time. Somebody's going to have a white Christmas up on the other side of the pond. Okay, let's switch over now to the Atlantic side. Let's go to our side because we are dealing with this subtropical jet that is running across the southern states from Texas through the Carolinas. And there's snow in West Texas. And believe it or not, the models actually bring snow down to South Texas and into southeastern Louisiana. They might even see some snow in New Orleans out of this come Thursday night, Friday morning. If I know New Orleans, and I know it well since I lived there many years ago, they're having a party over the fact that there might be some snow and sleet. They really like to see it down that part, which is rare. There's even some snow being indicated on the Florida Panhandle here. But as far as the East Coast is concerned, this wave, by all the models now, including the NAM, which got a little aggressive at one point today, but you got to be careful with that model. Sometimes it hits home runs, and many times it strikes out. It then backed away, and the wave goes out well to the south and east, and it actually misses just about everybody here along the mid-Atlantic and in the Northeast. You've got this upper air system that's swinging around to the north, and I'll show you on the jet stream in a second why that's happening. Another powerhouse upper air system and surface low will be dropping southeastward. You can see that low in northern Ohio, and the GFS is trying to show snow from central and southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois to Chicago. This would be for later Monday into Monday night, and across much of Michigan. That low heads across Ohio, so a good chunk of Ohio, except the southern half, gets some snow out of this. And the low, in this position, what'll probably happen is you'll have this surface low that is going to be going into western Pennsylvania, but you can see how the isobars are stretched out east over New Jersey, Long Island, and offshore. There's probably a second low that develops off the New Jersey coast, and that will eventually, you see it there, eventually take over, and this could bring some snows to New England, to coastal New England. Maybe Boston might get something good out of this, and up through central and northern New England. And as that low wraps up, it brings down very cold air into the eastern part of the United States, beginning late Tuesday into Thursday of next week, and rolling forward, because the pattern overall is going to stay on the cold side. We start to get, something tries to come out to, you've got another push of cold air from the north with the front, and it looks like there might be a wave with this. This is down the road now. We're into the weekend before Christmas weekend, and that's as far as the new GFS goes at this point, because we don't have it yet past day 10. It's still updating. Why are we not getting anything significant? Good question. And we'll put the upper air on. The big issue with this lead system is the fact that you've got this northern stream part of the jet that's coming around, and you'll see it here. You can see the trough in the south. That's actually a pretty well-defined shortwave, and normally you might get excited about this with that upper trough coming down from the north, but the problem here, and all the models show this, is that the northern stream is so dominant that here's the southern stream trough is running here from western South Carolina down into the eastern Gulf of Mexico as a separate feature. The north comes down and just basically squashes it. You can barely find it here by Sunday, and that northern part of the trough doesn't really swing around. It just kind of moves along in a west to east fashion. So as a result, it pushes all that moisture out offshore rather than bringing it up. You see how it just kind of moves from west to east? If it were to swing around and lift up, that would have brought all of this up the coast, but that's not the case. Now, once that goes out, you've got another powerhouse that's going to be dropping southeastward from Canada, and you see it here. And this is a very impressive upper air storm that drops into the eastern part of the United States. But all the development is happening basically too far north to impact places like Washington, Baltimore, Philadelphia, and New York. But this is in a good spot for snow for perhaps Boston, Eastern Connecticut, and Massachusetts. Now, one of the things I will say, since we are out now at day 6 and 7, is that there's always the possibility that this could wind up being slower and a little bit further to the south, in which case then that may open the door for something to happen, for the back edge of any snow to be further south and west than what's being indicated at the moment. But this is going to be very cold air, regardless of whether there's any snow or not. And then we pull that out and lift it up. And going into the long range, there's always going to be some moderation between air masses. And you do get that as one trough pulls out. And here's that next trough that's getting ready to swing in along about day 10. So, I've said a number of times over the past few weeks that when we go into this cold pattern, for my area anyway, it could wind up being cold and dry, and it doesn't necessarily, just because you have all these indicators that are showing us to be cold, it doesn't and stormy, they don't necessarily pan out that way. If we look at I'm going to show you the indices here, and we'll bring that up. Going forward, this is supportive for the pattern to stay somewhat cold, at least through the next 2 weeks. And the primary driver here is the EPO index, the Eastern Pacific Oscillation, which stays rather strongly negative right through the period. And we've got that PNA, that Pacific North America index, which tells us that the ridge in the west is going to be very strong, off the wall at the top of the charts here up until about mid-month. Then it kind of declines a bit and then starts another upswing as we go toward Christmas. So we'll watch to see what happens when we get into this decline part. That'll flatten the ridge in the west, and then it'll start to pop up again. The North Atlantic Oscillation to measure blocking, as we were seeing a week ago, going to the neutral position this weekend, and then going positive rather strongly for a short period of time, so there's no blocking, but then it drops rapidly back to neutral and stays very close to the neutral line from the 15th of December right through the 20th. And when we look at the upper air, that kind of makes sense that that it would do that, because there were some signs that pressures are going to fall in the North Atlantic and then rise again. I'll get the wider view here of the upper air. Let's put up that North America so we could see it better. And you can start to you see how the pressures there's a ridge out here in the Atlantic along about 20 west, pushing northward and northwestward over Greenland again. If we go back to the beginning, okay, so here it is now, and there's that big ridge in the west. You can see the trough in the east swinging down and around, and then another arm of energy coming down and around. That's for Tuesday, so we're going to have to watch that. The big ridge in the west is intact with that deep trough coming in the east. There might still be room for something to happen, as I said, in areas. Boston looks like might be sitting in a good spot with this, and we will then as that lifts up and rotates around mid-month, you still have some semblance of ridging up toward Greenland. And here's the point, probably where the NAO is coming to the end of its briefly positive period. But notice this is now out to day 11 and almost to day 12. Even though that ridge in the west kind of weakens somewhat, it tries to kind of starts to pop back up again as we go into the weekend of the week of December 18th, the week before Christmas. So you still have this polar flow coming down from northern Canada straight into the eastern states as we start the week before Christmas. So everything here to me says that the pattern the pattern is going to definitely stay cold. Whether it gets stormy or not remains to be seen. But I still think that there are going to be chances, and I still think that there's probably something in here, something in there that the models are not really keying on very well at this point because it's too far out into the long range, and we're not going to see anything show up until we get a little bit closer. So let me come back to you guys and give you a big hello. By the way, I put up my link to the Joe Stradamus store. I'll put it up again. And, if you feel like you want to put some Joe Stradamus stuff in someone's Christmas stocking, by all means, go right ahead. So let's say hi to everybody here. And of course, my buddy Jason Schaefer is on, who I'll be working with on Saturday. And Gary Snail, I'm just majoring in meteorology in Rutgers, and I've learned so much from you, and hopefully one day we can meet. Oh, good for you. I'm really glad to hear that. I was talking with my colleague about the fact that when he and I came through school and kind of cut our teeth in our early years in our career, we didn't have all these models. We only had a couple of models, and they only went out 48 hours or even 72 hours. So we really had to learn intuitively how to forecast, and it's different now. And I would just say to you, Gary, that try to not rely too much on what models are telling you, and use learn to cut your teeth on the very short range to figure out what's going to happen, because that will give you a big advantage down the road. Sometimes I think there's too much that we look at in terms of guidance, and that people just kind of reflexively model cast instead of actually forecasting. And I don't think that's a good way of learning how weather really works. By the way, Cole's around somewhere. He's sleeping on my Giants blanket. He is very well, by the way. He's put on a little bit of weight, and he's doing good, and he's back to some semblance of normalcy. So that is good to see. Robert Heiss, I don't know why you can't see me, because I'm there. I don't think anybody else is having any issues. But yeah, refresh your browser. So I'm hoping that you're on board here. Okay, Tam Lewis, where are you? I'm sorry, I forgot. But if you're up in my neck of the woods, the warm ground doesn't really work. The warm ground theory only works in instances when snow is very, very light. Okay, when you get intensity, it doesn't. The ground temperature is not a factor in snow accumulation. Just so you know, because if that were the case, we had three big snowfalls in the Northeast last year that all came right after we had days of temperatures up in the 60s. So that didn't stop the snow from accumulating. Intensity is far more important. If you snow very lightly, yeah, then it might work. And yes, Watershed 44, snow in Greece, not impossible. Let's see. Type of pattern where you won't see a storm until 24 to 36 hours before it hits. I won't necessarily argue against that, Gary. there's always a chance that this system from Friday night, Saturday might back westward, but you're going to have to get that upper feature, not to squash that southern feature the way it is. And I just wonder at this point whether the models now, they've all kind of zeroed in on the fact that it is going to get squashed, that it would be odd to see it go in the other direction. But hey, you certainly never know. And, what the pattern is showing up now, we're very early in the game, obviously. So, and of course, you've got the fact that it is early December, and snows this time of year are not unheard of, but they are uncommon, and you kind of have to have the setups to be just right in order for them to happen. And right now, the way the upper air is, some things are right. Certainly the cold air, part of the equation is there, but the other parts of the equation are not there. And that certainly could change over time. Let's see. Thank you, Robert. Really appreciate that. Danielo Yakubov. Any snow for eastern Bergen County in New Jersey? Not the way this is happening, at least for Friday night, Saturday. Although I did, I thought initially that wouldn't be the case with this first system because of the fact that it was only going to back so far westward. Thank you, Kevin Francis, for hitting Super Chat for a nice cup of coffee for me at Starbucks. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Very kind of you. And let me just acknowledge that on the chat board. There you go. And let's see. Tom Adams, heat island of Boston matter to snow accumulation? I don't think so, Tom. If it's cold enough, it really doesn't matter. We're in December. The sun angle's very low, and I'm shocked that I even said that because I don't pay attention to those things. When I'm making my forecast, even when we're in March, I don't really pay too much attention to sun angle issues. I look more at snow intensity. Are we going to have moderate to heavy snow, or are we going to have light snow? And I think that has a much bigger impact because the heavier the snow, usually that impacts the temperature at ground level. So you can easily correct, readings that, especially in March, where, you could easily be in the 40s and 50s and suddenly you're at 29. So, sun angle and ground temperature to me are not elements that I use when I try to figure out how much snow we're going to have. Yes, Kevin, you're a big Starbucks guy. Thank you again. That'll get me a nice big cup of coffee at Starbucks. Dune Cat, welcome aboard. Do I think that it's likely that the pattern will shift sometime in the next month? So I'm going into January. I don't know. I'm not good with long range stuff. I've said that a number of times. It's hard for me to really get my head around the long range because it's so highly, a lot of stuff to look at. It's highly technical. Some people are very good at it. I'm not. So I have to really kind of punt on your question. But it seems to me that this winter is going to be less with the volatility. So maybe when the pattern locks, maybe this is the lock period. And sometimes in the winter times when you get these patterns to lock for long periods of time, they can stay like that for several to 6 weeks or more. Right now, it seems like we're going to stay cold through through much of the month of December, colder than average in the eastern part of the United States. So certainly through the middle part of the month and maybe a little bit beyond that, we're going to be we're going to be cold in the east, and you guys in the west are going to be warm. Now, whether the stormy part of that equation changes is another matter. The pattern can always modify and adjust along the way, and we may see that happen as we get deeper into December and towards January. And David, yes, I do drink Dunkin' also. If it's coffee, I drink it. Believe me. Anthony Orr, does the GFS tend to be warm bias compared to the euro? That's actually a good question. The GFS for a long time had a warm bias to it. Now it kind of seems neutral to me, but that changes from that kind of ebbs and flows. But It used to have a distinct warm bias. I don't know that it has that warm bias anymore, or if it does, it has it less than it used to. Alcina. People seem to be really discouraged by weather models regarding people who want snow. My gut is telling me that this storm will be a little closer to what models are showing right now. Not impossible, because of the fact that we've seen instances like this with stalled fronts off the East Coast and flat waves in the last 6 weeks. I could think of 3 of them, including the one right before Thanksgiving that backed westward at the last minute. I am not going to rule it out yet. Perhaps at this time tomorrow, I may rule it out. I certainly would be discouraged by seeing the fact that all the models now seem to be showing all the precip offshore, but that could change. Finbar Cyril. Thank you very much for hitting super chat from England, the UK. Thank you. £5. Awesome. Really appreciate it. My first foreign transaction. Thank you very much. Bert Finch, teleconnections are in our favor. Something is bound to happen. Certainly that is the case. I would agree with you that the teleconnections are certainly where you would want to see them with regards to storminess in the eastern part of the United States. But remember, you could have all of those things there, but if the troughs are not in the right place, they're not going to do you any good. But the teleconnections are at least pointing in the right direction. I'm interested in Tuesday's event because of the dynamics are very, very strong and very powerful. That's shown in the upper air. Perhaps the models out at 56 to 168 hours at this point are, on the surface anyway, may do quite a bit of adjusting over time. So we'll have that to watch. And we're gonna have this. We're gonna be dealing with stuff like this all winter long. By the way, while we're talking about early next week, why don't we just take a peek? I didn't do it before, but we can do it now. We can take a peek at the snow map and see what the GFS did with the snows, because I didn't really take a good look at it. So why don't we go? We'll go on the eastern view. And let's put up that snowfall forecast. I'll put the total positive snow because this way it'll account for any kind of melting over the period. And we'll start from the beginning. There we go. It's a little late at night, folks. It's a long day, and I'm a little slow on the uptake at this point. The lake effect, by the way, machines should be busy over the next week or so, and you can see at least into Tuesday, the lake effect does do quite well into Tuesday afternoon. Looks like the model is kind of cheating Boston a little bit here, but that's where the southern edge of some snow is, down to the north of New York City and all the big cities. Upstate New York does well. Northern New England does well. Michigan does well, probably with some lake effect going on there through the 10-day period and along the north shores of Lake Superior and southeastern Canada. And you get some lighter amounts as you go back up through the northern plains. But that's a fair amount of snow for early December to see accumulating snow pretty far south. In Ohio, right along the northern part of Ohio, south of Lake Erie, some decent snows being indicated there, and even back over toward Detroit and Chicago to Milwaukee, showing some decent snow amounts for the next 10 days or so. So we'll see how the map changes. And by the way, you can see how the stripe of snow that it shows for southeastern Louisiana on northeastward into parts of Georgia and Alabama, and also back through Texas, a little blotch of snow being indicated in parts of South Texas, and of course into Southwest Texas, where they're probably going to have a little bit more. Very interesting how this cold air has come down west of the Mississippi, and also just to the east of the Mississippi, and then you get that second shot that comes through a bit later on. So this is going to be fun this winter. We're going to have a lot to look at, I'm sure, and we're going to have our ups and downs with regards to the forecasting. But everybody's here kind of holding my hand, I guess, as we go through this. Let's see. Just trying to get Grayson Ward. You saw on that snow map that little stripe of some snow that comes into the picture. Jason, let's see. Gary, what do you got? Models handle Northern Stream better, GFS or Euro. I've heard from people that one model handles the Northern Stream better, the other the Southern Stream. I kind of think that's another thing that tends to ebb and flow. The European has been very inconsistent for the last month or so, or maybe even longer. I tend to think the European does better with the Northern Stream systems than the GFS. I think the NAM usually does better with the Southern Stream systems. But one of the things I noticed about the NAM tonight was that it was showing in the first 12 hours, not that much across the Gulf states, and yet at the same time, when we looked at the satellite and radars for that time frame, the radars are pretty low. Radars are fairly loaded, so I wonder whether the NAM may be missing something when it comes to that. Let's see. Lack of technology actually improved the meteorologist's forecasting skills. Watershed 44. I think that's a valid point because you had to use your head. I noticed it with it was funny. I was having a conversation with one of my younger colleagues, and we used to use I still use it, and my colleague Joe Rayo, who's on FiOS 1 News Hudson Valley, he uses it too. The FOOS. The FOOS, for those of you who don't know, it's run with the NAM model, and it's a numerical breakdown of what the model does for 6-hour periods, and you can see how much precip it produces, how cold the atmosphere is, how much vertical motion you have, how much lift there is in the atmosphere, and it's a really good forecasting tool when you've got something going on. He's never used it. Doesn't even know how to read it. He said that they didn't use it in school. They didn't learn about it. It wasn't a tool that they had any experience with, which I thought was hilarious because, us old guys like to use the FOOS. It's extremely useful in storm situations, especially the NAM FOOS. It's very good. And they're actually. There was a site that I used to use too. It was, I believe, the Texas A&M weather site, where I could actually it would basically give a GFS version of the FOOS. And that was really helpful for me here on Long Island because when we had a number of storms in winters where it only snows here and nowhere else, it picks it up. And it breaks it down. It gives me amounts and liquid precip amounts that I can mentally turn, into forecast snow amounts. That it was great to have, but unfortunately, the last couple of times when I checked that site, that tool wasn't working anymore, which was a shame. But when we get into a situation, I'm going to try it again. Maybe they got it working again. A lot of the experience, I have as a forecaster. A lot of times, it's sort of like having a library in my head, or computer files, and I kind of go back when I see something. As having seen so many storms over the last 35 plus years, my head knows where to go. So Jason, is the Texas A&M site still working again? I hope it is, because I really, really like using that tool. Karina Rivera, snow in Texas. What's up with that? Hey, the last couple of winters you haven't seen very much. So this is there are parts of Texas that are going to get snow out of this that haven't seen snow in years. So this is certainly a good indicator of how how far south this cold air has been able to penetrate in that part of the country. So maybe it's a sign of where we're going to go down the road. As a snow lover myself, and if those of you who are on here who are snow lovers, I would not even be even the tiniest bit discouraged by what you're seeing, because it's so early. I mean, I can probably count on my hand in the last 25, 30 years the number of times it has snowed before the middle part of December. It's unusual, and there have been a lot of those years where it's been real, certainly cold enough for snow to occur, but the vast majority of the time it doesn't happen. Again, it's a question of having the right setup with regards to this, and I don't think you do at this point. You got the cold air part of the equation, but you don't have the storm part of the equation. And even Mexico, Rosendo Benitez could see some snow, absolutely, down south of the border and some of the mountains. By all means, there will be snow there. The models all show it that I looked at. Bert Finch, what days and locations will you be at the libraries? Okay, I'm done for this month. My next library visit will be at the Bayport Blue Point Library on Monday, January the 8th. So hopefully that's a good date that we'll have something to talk about, because I really like having, if we've got some weather going on when I have one of those library talks, it's great, because then we can really get into the guidance and really get into the models and look at what's going on. And of course, we'll be able to at least review back what's been happening during the month, would have been happening during the month of December. Trish and Lou, snow in Wisconsin. You've been asking for it, and you got it. I tried to deliver for you, and I think you're going to get some. Robert Heiss, I think I've seen more snow on Thanksgiving than Christmas. Oh, I'm sorry. The Bay Point Blue Point Library, that'll be at 7 o'clock on Monday, January 8th. Robert Heiss, I think I've seen more snow on Thanksgiving than Christmas here over the years, if I remember correctly. Well, every once in a while on Thanksgiving or around Thanksgiving, something happens. When you look back, by the way, snow actually on Christmas Day has only happened. I was looking at New York City records. Actual snow falling on Christmas Day has only happened on a handful of times. It has snowed around Christmas Day on either side. It actually, there have been a number of snowfalls that have occurred immediately after Christmas, like on December 26th, 27th, 28th, and going toward the end of the month than before. So I often wonder whether if Christmas had been more of a, last 2 or 3 days of December rather than the 25th, or if it was in early January, or you probably would have had more white Christmases. By the way, white Christmas for New York City, either snow on the ground, at least an inch of snow on the ground, or snowing on the actual day, usually happens about roughly somewhere between 20-23%, somewhere in there of the time. So 4 out of 5 years you don't have one. So again, December is kind of one of those odd months. There have been some big blockbuster storms, especially in the second half of the month, but also you've got years like 2 years ago where we had that ridiculously warm Christmas Eve and Christmas Day here with temperatures at 70. I doubt that that's going to happen this time around. So we'll see where it goes with the longer term pattern. And yes, Alcina, the December pattern that we have here, the previous two, last December wasn't too terrible. We actually had a couple of snowfalls, if I remember correctly, and one was not too far from this particular date, the first one. So you go back and look at the records, there are some months where you don't get anything in December, but there's some months where you get nailed. Let's see. Snowstorm in South Dakota, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. You've got that low dropping down. You'll probably have some snow out of that. I wouldn't call it a snowstorm, but you are going to get some snow out of that, Trish and Lou, as that low drops down on later Sunday night into Monday as that next big upper trough starts to swing out southeastward from Canada. You went to the one last year, and you at the Hurricane Hunter at MacArthur. Yes, I was there for the Hurricane Hunter plane when it was at MacArthur Airport back in May. Tom Adams is dubious of first snow in Boston. Well, it's going to happen eventually. We're not going to go the whole winter without snow. It is going to happen. So keep, be patient. Everybody needs, you snow lovers out there, you need to be patient, okay? It's way too early. All right, good night to you, Robert. And you know what? Would not shock me if the Giants go out on Sunday after everything that's happened this week with the coaching changes, that they wind up going out and blowing them away. I guess with the whole political situation with McAdoo in the locker room was not the most ideal. Trish and Lou, the longest that we went without snow. Okay, I don't, for your area, I don't know. I can tell you that for my area, there was one winter back in the late 90s where we did not see any snow, any measurable snow until the day after the first day of spring, where some air spots around here got 5 inches. That was one of the snowless winters ever. And also, I bring this up, the winters from 96, 97 through 99, 2000, 4 winters in a row that were just, for snow lovers, were horrible. Okay, a lot of those winters had snowfall amounts under 20 inches for the season, and there were, I think, two of those winters where the snowfall for the season was under 10 inches. So you can get, that was during a very long drought of snow that I think lasted almost 30 years, and we've kind of flipped the coin the opposite direction in the last 16 winters, where our snowfalls here in a good part of the Northeast, not all of the Northeast, but certainly where I am, have been well above normal. The average snowfall in the last 16 years where I am is well over 40 inches, which is about 10 inches above the normal of 30 to 35, and 20 inches above the average that occurred between 1970 and 2000. Cynthia Guignout, it's good to see you. Do I prefer forecasting winter weather systems more than tropical systems? Yes, I do. Winter storms for me are that's what drives me in a big way. Not that I don't like forecasting with the tropical systems, but the wintertime systems are a lot more challenging in different ways. And the fact that I'll admit it. When it snows, I'm looking out the window. I'm enjoying every minute of it. I'm trying to watch every flake that falls and take it all in. So, but I really, I cut my teeth on it really during all the winters that I have forecasted here in my area, and the winters through in this 2000 to starting in the winter of 2000, 2001, and going right through last year. I mean, I've seen so many different things, and there's far more. Look who just showed up. Look who's here. Hey, you want to say hi to everybody? You took your little nap? He's back wanting to be on camera. If this doesn't tell you that Kovu is almost back to normal, he's lost, from when he first started making his appearances, he's lost about half his body weight. But the good news is that he is no longer losing weight, and may have actually put on a little bit. Still a little bony from what he used to be, but he's always, no matter what, he's still this he's this very, very sweet, loving little cat, and we love him. He's just a little baby. He is. He loves to be held like a baby. It's just really incredible for a cat. He loves to have his belly rubbed. You can pull his tail all day long. Gary, he's 12, so he's not a young man anymore, but he's not an old guy either. So we got his diabetes stabilized, and that's good. And his blood sugar is doing good, and he's a much happier cat than he was about a week or so ago. All right, folks, we're going to call it a night. Thank you. Those of you who hit Super Chat tonight, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Check out the Joe Stradamus store. As I said, there are some things on there. I got mugs, T-shirts. I even have phone cases on there. So if you want to get something to put into your Christmas stocking, or want somebody to get something to put into your Christmas stocking, you can take a look at that. And I just put the link up on the chat board. And yeah, Gary, I got to tell you, if you have a cat that he might have diabetes, the biggest problem you're going to have is trying to figure out how much insulin is going to work for him. And just a couple of notes ahead of time. If you wind up dealing with where you have to give him shots, he gets a shot twice a day. Make sure he eats right before you give him the shot. And I'm not talking about an hour before. Let him eat. And as soon as he's done eating, you can, go ahead and give him the shot. You're not supposed to give it to him on an empty stomach. And if he has a sugar crash where you give him too much insulin, you give him a little bit of honey or corn syrup. Don't give him plain sugar, but give him honey or corn syrup to get his blood sugar back up. Okay, so just a little advice there, and it'll take a number of days for you to do that. And the other thing too is get yourself, just in case, have it handy. Get yourself a little ball syringe, and if you have to, hydrate them, because they get dehydrated very fast. They drink a lot with the diabetes. So if he goes into some kind of shock over the insulin, you might want to force some water down just to keep him hydrated. We did that while he was having his big crash moment back earlier this week, and I think that really saved him from death's door. He's, like I said, he's a good little baby. All right, folks, we'll see you tomorrow. Back to, I guess, a regular time. We'll do it at 6 o'clock. I'll schedule it. In the event that I can't do it at 6, I will schedule it up on the page, and then I'll do it again at 11. I'll try to do it again tomorrow night at 11:30 if I miss the 6 o'clock one. All right, have a great Thursday, which is what it is now, and we will see you a bit later today.